Welcome back. The Senate is changing by at least 12, maybe 13, if Texas Senator John Cornyn loses his primary runoff after President Trump endorsed against him, stunning Senate leadership. And that's before any potential upsets in Maine and Ohio, where incumbents are still fighting to hold onto their seats this November. Come January, there will be new names on the doors of 4 retiring Democrats and 8 Republicans leaving the upper chamber. I sat down with one from each party who wonder on their way out whether Washington still makes room for the middle. At what moment did you know in your gut that it was time for the curtain to close on this chapter of your career?
In August of 2018.
That's a lot earlier than I knew.
Yeah, I know.
North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis had been thinking about leaving for years, even changing his ringtone at one point to John Mellencamp's "I'm not running anymore." But he stayed in because
we would have almost certainly lost and had a Democrat replace me. I didn't want to do that.
The risk is still there. But this time, Tillis says the onus is on his party.
You could trap yourself into thinking you're the only one that could win this race or the only one to do it. They've got to step up. They got to raise the money. They got to win the race. So I won't feel any responsibility. I will be concerned if we see a major shift.
This week, Tillis blasted White House advisors as sycophants in a Politico interview, warning that decisions on health care, Iran, even the White House ballroom, could jeopardize Republican control of Congress and President Trump's legacy. I sat down with Tillis alongside New Hampshire Democrat Senator Jeanne Shaheen earlier this month, with plans to air this interview before today. Ironically, the events since made their reflections at the exit more timely.
When it becomes a problem for the base of both parties, that they don't want you working across the aisle, there's no way to get things done, to move an agenda that's important to the country.
The extremists of both of our parties have one thing in common. They are objectively unproductive.
Since we spoke, President Trump consolidated control over the GOP, backing challengers who campaigned on loyalty to oust incumbent Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy and Kentucky Rep. Thomas Massie. Even though Trump's threat to primary Tillis, too, factored into his decision to end his bid for a third term, Tillis doesn't think of it as punishment.
I was already trending in that direction when I had the disagreement over the H.R. 1 bill. You want to bring something, bring it. Just bring your A game. And so that doesn't frustrate me here. In fact, in some ways, it's liberating. That is something I think members are losing sight of.
Right.
Or because they can be so easily targeted and bludgeoned that they just simply don't make the investment anymore.
For Shaheen, the decision was less about political pressure than time.
By the end of my term, I will have served in the Senate for 18 years, 3 terms. I will have been in elective office for 30 years. And I'm going to turn 80 the same month I leave office.
Age, an issue her party spent the last presidential election trying to ignore, made Shaheen say yes to something Washington can't give her.
To have more time with my family is something I'm looking forward to.
But both senators from opposite parties are leaving frustrated that the system is rewarding conflict more than compromise.
There seemed to be much more of a willingness to work together, to work across the aisle than we've seen in recent years. You can't get things done if you're not willing to work together and understand that you can't have everything your own way all the time.
I would argue that President Obama really began a populist phase in this country. President Trump put it on steroids, but what allowed it to be put on steroids is the advent of social media.
Both say the result is Americans feel abandoned.
The cynicism and the feeling on the part of so much of the electorate that government's not ever going to work for them anymore.
There's really no place in the middle, right? Everybody thinks you, high fives you, gives you a fist pump when you do something, and wow, it's terrible, you got a serious primary. And I think that that's something that we need to balance the scales.
They say leaders on both sides contributed to the problem.
Where I'm concerned is that I think because of social media, because of rhetoric, I think this president's comments, I think we've seen an increase in political violence in a way that is really detrimental to the country.
Yeah, but I think social media, interest groups, people radicalize members. I mean, let's not forget
I
Let's
agree
not
with that.
forget, you know, Chuck Schumer went to the steps of the Supreme Court and said they have unleashed a whirlwind. So we have a leader and an Article I branch going to the steps of an Article II branch, right? Okay, now fast forward, we've got January the 6th, a number of other things. But if people want to be intellectually honest with themselves, for every tit, I can find a tat.
Senator Shaheen, you single out President Trump's rhetoric. His allies would point to a number of instances where Democrats have contributed to that. And do you believe that Democrats share in that blame?
I do. I think everybody shares in it. The thing that I hear most from my constituents in New Hampshire is, why can't you all just work together to do what needs to get done?
But they also say the system is structurally entrenched.
I think there are a lot of reasons why we have gotten to this place. One, our primaries, excuse me, because they move people to either ends of the political spectrum. But gerrymandering has really affected. It means that if you're in a safe district, whether it's Democrat or Republican, you don't have to listen to those people who you may disagree with or who may disagree with you, and figure out how to talk to them, how to move forward with them.
Tillis blames the media for fueling the problem.
But let's also be fair. You know, when's the last time you've seen an hour dedicated to the news to talk about the good things people are doing together, right?
Well, we have one on Special Report every week. It's called Common Ground.
But the news is generally based on who used the most incendiary language. And they're the ones who get the top of the hour.
Right.
They're the ones who get the panel to talk about it.
He's not entirely wrong.
It is ridiculous.
Extraordinarily outrageous.
Wow. So some of you are so naive.
The media and the population have a role to play here. We are a reflection of those who voted for us.
I think the point that is often missed is that there's a lot more working together here in this body than gets reported on. Because, as Thom says, one of the things, what gets reported is outrageous behavior.
And what never gets reported on is even some of the people who have some of the most contentious political relationships are generally respectful to each other when the cameras are off or when you're not in a committee.
That's right. I had dinner last night with Ted Cruz to talk about what's happening in Venezuela.
That is
So-
probably an
People might be surprised by that.
They might be.
That's exactly
Yes.
right. That's what I mean.
Another factor, they say fewer than ever are betting on the center.
What's missing in politics today is rewarding the more effective bipartisan people.
That's the other piece. The money.
Celebrity,
Money goes
and no
to the
outcome.
ends, the extremes.
Yeah.
Money doesn't go to people who are viewed as being in the middle trying to get things done.
Despite all that, neither is ready to throw in the towel on their team. Do you each still feel at home in your parties as you've watched them move farther to the left and to the right?
I do, and I think we're going to have a very robust primary for president on both sides of the aisle coming up in 28. And I think the way the person is going to get elected is by appealing to people not just in the base of the party, but you've got to expand beyond that if you're going to actually win.
Yeah, I agree. I think that our country likes a little bit of the sugar buzz that we're getting in this populist phase, but I think over time they're going to be looking for a leader.
Whether voters still want that kind of politics may be one of the biggest questions of the next election. Tillis and Shaheen plan to use their time left on the clock to protect one issue they believe will transcend generations.
Ukraine, and being able to put pressure on Russia to end this war in Ukraine in a way that is beneficial to America and to the West.
No, it just goes to show you how closely we work together, because I feel very, very strongly that I want to leave on a high note with supporting Ukraine. I mean, that is something that has profound long-term geopolitical consequences.
And that has real implications for America's national security, because if Russia wins that war, that gives Vladimir Putin license to go into a NATO country. It empowers Xi. It's not good either for our allies or for our adversaries.
We want to thank Senators Jeanne Shaheen and Thom Tillis for their time and their candor.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.